how would you tell people that designs? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome back for either the final or maybe next to last, penultimate episode, I think, of Giants of North America, at least going through this book, because I think, if I'm right, Shanti, we are almost done with this book, aren't we?
Correct.
Alright. So, in case you guys haven't been here before for this, my host for this is Vishanti, who has gone through this book, I think several times at this point, haven't you?
Oh my god, I've lost count.
Fair enough. And so the major point of this book is basically the author, one Richard J. Dewhurst, because he himself is tall, has apparently become obsessed with conspiracy theories about the actual historical existence of giants in North America. And to sum up real quickly, this is basically just a racist conspiracy theory about how Native Americans couldn't possibly have built the archaeological sites in America. Which, yes, they could have. Although, oddly enough, the idea that it had to be giants kind of implies that also Europeans couldn't have done it either. So I guess it implies just that normal humans, couldn't have done it. It requires giants, which, weird, but...
It's also a very, I don't want to say it's a racist conspiracy theory, but it is a very preposterous conspiracy theory that the reason that we don't have more evidence of giant skeletons for giant humans is that the Smithsonian Institution specifically is covering them up because they don't want Darwinian evolution to be proven wrong, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very big concern that Darwinian evolution not be proven wrong, because it's constantly just on the cusp of being overturned, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is something that I actually told Professor Dave when I met him recently, that I think the first... Huh? Yes, actually. Because, hey, look, if you get to go see science communicators do their bit, live, why wouldn't you go if it's local to you? So he did a recent event here. He gave a presentation on science communication and misinformation and stuff like that. It was really cool. And there was a live band that played after he did his presentation, and it was basically live video game music. So the audience got to choose which, parts of this narrative were going to happen next, and they would play the soundtrack as a video played. So
yeah, cool.
That was very fun. But anyway, like I said, the first video I think I'm going to probably put up on my channel when it launches soon is that there's no Pope of Science. And no matter how much pseudo-archaeologists or pseudo-historians or young earth creationists try to say otherwise, it doesn't matter if Darwin was wrong about X, Y, or Z. He's not the Pope of Science. His word is not law. That is not how science works.
Not even Neil deGrasse Tyson is the Pope of Science.
And not even Neil deGrasse Tyson. So it doesn't matter if one person is wrong about a thing. The rest of the scientific community verifies their work. Mm-hmm. And they do it independently. And if somebody gets something wrong, their peers will, well, sometimes not as politely tell them about it.
Right.
So people can try to say, oh, we're demolishing Darwin. You could say that all you want. It doesn't matter if he got some stuff wrong. It does not matter. And people who keep insisting that there's this top-down, dictation of the dogma of evolution or biology or, anthropology, that is simply not correct. So you're just shadowboxing at that point.
All right. Well, I think you have notes for us for this book. Is that correct?
I have a few. Okay. When we last left off, we were in the middle of a passage about a dig in Florida where I believe there was a company that had been sponsoring some kind of like it was a real estate developer and his business partner or something, and they were trying to build road, and they ended up finding essentially bog mummies.
Mm-hmm.
And when they, dug up the bog mummies, they were like, oh, wait a minute, this is probably important. So they, notified the authorities, who rightfully said, oh, yeah, we need to stop building a road here and actually excavate this properly. And out of, I don't know, charitable goodwill or ego, I don't care, the original financiers of this road project ended up sponsoring the actual archaeological dig. So that's cool.
Which we gave them props for, because you know what? That's it's always nice when you get some business people who are like, you know what, we're gonna do the right thing. That's what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
That
so
doesn't
they found
happen all that often.
They didn't find quite 200, remains, but it was really cool. You're like, hey, we got bog mummies in Florida, but Richard Dewhurst in this book is like, oh my gosh, look at all these red-haired mummies. And then he starts going off on a tangent about how, well, the anthropologists from the proper university were not being honest, and they weren't attributing these to the, proper pre-Native American inhabitants of North America. And I can't believe that there's so many rules about how you have to dig up humans, and that's just unreasonable. And the passage that you pulled up, you can read that part if you want to, because it's so
okay.
ridiculous.
We're going to start on the second paragraph here. The irony about this slavish obedience to local American Indian sensibilities is that both the spirit and lava caves in Nevada, and now numerous bog sites in Florida, the Indians' own native lore speaks of original inhabitants of these areas as being white-skinned, red-haired giants, which what? No, it doesn't.
No, it does not.
And also, it's... Look, there's a rule in archaeology that you're not allowed to just go dig stuff up without permission from the people who have some kind of ownership there. So, for instance, if someone just decided to go rooting around in the catacombs of, say, Rome, no, that's not okay. You need to get permission from, like, the locals, like, current landowners, government authorities, and things like that. Similarly, unsurprisingly, you want to go digging up ancient Native American sites, you need permission from the local natives as well as the local government. Yeah, I mean, imagine thinking that it would be important to get permission to root around in somebody's ancestral grave.
Can't believe.
Yeah, shocking. So, now, look, is there something to be said that, yeah, that this costs us knowledge in terms of archaeology? Yes, it does. But there's a reason that sciences have ethical codes, right? Like, sure,
yeah,
we can learn a whole lot more about genetics and stuff if we just start doing horribly unethical genetic testing on humans.
God.
It doesn't mean we should.
Yeah.
Like, oh, hey, look, we can do a whole bunch of knockout tests. It's like, okay, so you want to fertilize a bunch of human embryos, knock out large portions of their genome, then bring them to term and see what horrible things that does to them? No. That's not okay. No, you can't bring whole humans into existence just to watch them suffer and take notes.
Yeah.
So similarly, when it comes to archaeology, yeah, you need to respect the feelings of the local people whose history you're digging around in.
Yeah, and even if you don't find a local indigenous population with which to consult, you still need to follow protocols. Mm-hmm. Not just for ethical reasons, however, those are critically important, but also there are archaeological procedures that you need to follow, because if you just go, chopping around in the dirt with a pickaxe and end up destroying priceless, invaluable, irreplaceable pottery or bones, and you damage them, like, you can't just glue them back together. It's just,
Also, you need to do things like establish provenance, which is a very important part of archaeology. It's also important in the antiques trade, and it's essentially the same thing. How do we know that what you say you have is what you say you have from where you say you got it? The answer is you document all of this very, very carefully. Also a thing in paleontology. If I just show up with a dinosaur bone, we'll be like, well, okay, that's great that that's a dinosaur bone, but what are we going to do with it? We don't know where it came from.
Where did you find it?
Yeah.
How deep was it? Were there other bones? Was there stuff around it? You know, what were the conditions of the dig? Like, this is, well, I think you've talked about this several times in your
quite a few actually.
Kent with Bent. But provenance is something that he simply just does not have and does not care to have. You know,
just anyone can show up with just about
his
anything and say it's from anywhere. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that somebody shows up with a pickle jar and, oh, there's a, you know, a petrified this or that. And he just takes them at their word. And then he thinks that, you know, the way to verify this is providing their phone number. No.
Mm-mm.
That is not it.
No.
Kent.
Also, really weird. It's okay. Look, I know that a lot of those we're getting a little off topic, so we're going to go back on. But I know that a lot of those were recorded like 10, 20 years ago. But still, it's really weird to be like, here's someone's actual phone number. I'm just going to give it out on the internet.
Yeah, well, I mean, and he's still doing it when it comes to, you know, provenance. Even if he's not giving out people's phone numbers, he's still just like, yeah, this is a petrified so-and-so in a pickle jar that somebody gave me, and da-da-da-da.
Yep.
He's still...
And so, Mr. Dewhurst here has a similar problem where he's just like, well, someone said they found a big old jaw, so I guess it's true.
Yeah, and it's like last time where I literally just cut out, you know, the teeth that were the normal human size, and in paint dragged them down and overlaid them over his alleged, you know, giant skeleton jaw. And it turns out they were almost identical in size.
Yeah, they were slightly bigger than like the average size teeth.
Just slightly.
Like, okay. No one has ever claimed that human jaw size isn't variable. You found a slightly above average jaw.
We keep saying stacking bowls, but that's exactly what it was.
Mm-hmm.
If you put human teeth far enough, you know, behind regular or alleged giant-sized teeth, they're going to look extremely out of scale. You're going, oh my god, those are giant.
It's like we said, the bottom bowl isn't bigger than the top bowl when you stack bowls.
It's not.
No, as it turns out. That's not how that works. You don't have to get decreasing size bowls in order to stack them.
Well, this ties back into where we're going in the book, because before we went live, we were having a discussion about perspective and forced perspective, and how, you know, in real life, Elijah Wood, who, you know, played Frodo, is not in fact like 3 feet tall.
No,
and he's mentioned that short. He is fairly short, which I can verify that I have been about 2 feet away from him in real life. He's not tall. However, he's not 3 feet. No,
he's not hobbit size. He's human size.
He's human sized. He's about my size, and I'm around 5'5", 5'6" ish. So that's not hobbit size, but it's definitely not, you know.
Yes,
tall.
It's not.
Which
but
is
yeah,
fine.
Forced perspective. It's a thing that's been used in Hollywood for years, and it's a thing that apparently still baffles people when it comes to photographs.
I mean, they did it in old Buster Keaton movies. You know, is it his film where he's apparently dangling off a clock tower, and you see the camera pull back, and it's just a set with forced perspective, but it looks just uncannily real. I think it's an old Buster Keaton movie.
When you have just a 2D scene, it's really hard to get all the cues that you usually use for 3 dimensions, because your brain actually takes information from both eyes and uses parallax in order to give you a really pretty good sense of depth. But when you don't have that, it's really hard to judge distance. Now, it's not that you can't, right? Big things tend to be closer if you know about how big they are normally. But, like, if you've ever seen someone who, say, had an eye injury or only had one eye, they miss things when they reach for them sometimes, you know? They'll go to grab a glass off the table and they'll just completely miss. Or they'll knock it down because they reached too far. It happens. So...
Why are you using them big words like parallax? Paraslax?
Because I figure that my audience is not primarily made up of flat earthers, so they might understand what parallax is.
That's that character from the Green Lantern comics, right?
So, what page should I... do we want to talk about the red hair? What do we want to talk about?
So I was tying it back into some of the links that I had sent you before we started, and there's one. It's on the blog where it says 104 Understanding the Fakes, and I actually pulled out the picture of Ralph Glidden, and this is one of the most classic non-giant giant photos. So while you're kind of yes, that one. So while you're kind of pulling that up, anyone who wants a quick geography lesson, there are a string of islands called, I believe, the Channel Islands. They're just off the coast of Southern California. One of those islands is Catalina Island. It's quite beautiful, very popular vacation spot. You can take a ferry to get there for like, I think $35 one way. It's cool. It's a good day trip.
Kind of expensive for a ferry, but okay.
Well, I mean, it's also partially the distance, because like on a map it looks really, really close, but it takes,
it's like a 4-hour ferry ride kind of thing?
It's not, I don't think it's quite 4 hours, but it's gonna take at least 1 or 2. So.
Okay. Yeah. I'm used to taking like the Kitsap to Seattle ferry, where that's not a very long ferry.
Yeah, it's definitely not 45 minutes. So anyway, on Catalina Island, back in the Wild West days of, archaeology, people would just go digging stuff up out of the ground with absolutely no regard for respecting the remains or respecting the people who were, descendants of those inhabitants or whatever. They would just dig them up, throw them in a museum, and go, look at all the primitive people.
Yeah, there's a fine line between grave robbing and archaeology, and in the 19th century, no one really cared where that line was.
Yeah, there really wasn't. There really wasn't a line at all.
Yeah, they were just like, you know what? I'm important because I'm going to put it in a museum. So, like, when Indy said, that belongs in a museum, he was wrong. It belongs back with the indigenous people he stole it from.
Correct.
They can decide whether or not it belongs in a museum. He doesn't get to. And
let's be real, the more you kind of learn your history of archaeology and the development of these areas of science and the very extreme lack of ethical concerns, the more you're like, you know what? They were right to put a giant rolling stone in that temple, and he deserved to get mowed down by that thing.
I mean, it was literally there to get rid of him and his type. Yeah. That's it's like, and hey, you know what? Hey, this is to protect from grave robbers. Guess what you are? A grave robber.
Yep. Yep.
But anyway, let's talk about this 8-foot tall skeleton, which it's just close. It's like the Father Ted skit.
It is the Father Ted skit. That's small. That's far away. It's exactly that. So anybody who goes around talking about, famous giants and they've been covered up, they're almost inevitably going to end up pulling up this Ralph Glidden photo from Catalina Island. There's still a museum there on the island today. You can go to it. There have been a lot of developments in the last century to either reinter some of the disturbed remains or to kind of present them in a way that acknowledges the absolutely flagrant racism and the conditions under which they were ripped out of the ground. Because he would just take literal lines of bones and just put them on shelves. It was like, here's a row of skulls, here's a row of femur bones, here's a row of rib cages. He would just throw them in a museum, and it was like a giant just bone museum. And obviously that's not okay. And this photo, people who believe in giants will be like, look at this photo, Ralph Glidden found an 8-foot, 9-foot, whatever, how many foot skeleton.
You get to put your own number in there?
Yeah, insert number here.
Because you know what isn't on this photo? A scale bar.
Exactly. This is not a level field of depth. He's standing several feet behind where that skeleton is, and he's above the segment of earth in which that skeleton is laying.
Yeah.
The scale is wildly out of proportion. And if you were to stand him directly next to it in the same horizontal and vertical plane, it would be a normal sized human skeleton.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's actually not that hard to figure out. Like, you can do things like, okay, you can see about how rounded the lip of that hole is there on the, the front right, and you can see how, about how tall that is and how that lip tends to narrow as you get closer to Ralph Glidden and whatnot. It's not perfect, but it's like, yeah, you can tell there's a lot of perspective going on here if you pay attention. So,
yeah.
But yeah, a lot of these are just, oh, hey, look, close-up skeleton, therefore big.
Yeah, and it's really challenging with this photo specifically because it's black and white, or at best sepia. You don't get the fact that the bottom right-hand corner of the photo is a giant, like, cliff of earth. Shouldn't have said giant there. That was probably not the best one. Large.
To be very careful with that word.
A large piece of earth. And then you look into the, grave, and then there's another little elevated platform, and that's where, Glidden is standing. Obviously, you're not going to get that unless you're really paying attention. What I found ironic was the blog that kind of was posting this and talking about hoax giant photos or perspective, misunderstandings. The blog itself believes in giants and is digging around in a cave in New Zealand and has been since 2016 trying to prove that there are giant skeletons in there. And over the last however many years have never found any evidence. They found what they think is a bone, but they refuse to release it to be tested because they are convinced that the evil conspiracy of scientists will steal the bone because it disproves Darwin.
Yeah, which no, it doesn't. Nothing about Darwin or evolution precludes the existence of giants. It's sort of like when the young Earth creationists are like, "Oh, we have evidence of non-avian dinosaurs living with humans," and it's like, well, first, no, you don't. But even if you did, so what? Doesn't do anything. Nothing about this precludes the idea of late surviving dinosaurs or bigger groups of humans. Also, I think you might have something to say about this, Vishanti. But Brainbug is here, and she said this was a picture that L.A. Marzulli used along with the giant of Kandahar.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about L.A. Marzulli?
Oh my god. Okay. Thank you, Brainbug. You are like the MVP of the day. I have a special sort of chip on my shoulder, if you will, for L.A. Marzulli, who is one of the most credulous grifters in all of like pseudo archaeology. He goes live every day and talks about UFOs. They're actually demons, and apparitions of Mary are demonic deceptions, and giants were real, but they're being covered up. And guess what? They were actually human angel hybrids called Nephilim, and we're going to find them, and we're going to DNA test them. We're going to prove that this is satanic something hybrid, blah blah conspiracy.
Angel DNA. That'll be a thing. How you know what angel DNA looks like in the first place? I don't know. It's a good question.
Well, unsurprisingly, he is also a young Earth creationist,
you don't say,
anti-vaxxer, far right-winger, and conspiracy theorist. So,
well, all those things they all tend to cluster.
Yeah, I feel, well, Brainbug says that he's giving Ron Wyatt a run for the title. Well, they have slightly different areas of like focus, but they are very much in the same like camp of people who are just making wild claims and believing things and not producing evidence. The difference with L.A. Marzulli is he tries to crowdsource his material, and every single day that he has his little show, it's a third fluff where he's hawking, survival food packs or gold pieces. And then he'll do his little bit on either giants or a trip he took to Peru or Mexico, or he something Marian apparitions, something UFOs. And then he'll be like, if you have a UFO report or something that you feel like can't be explained, please email me, please call me. He's just begging every day. And it's kind of sad, honestly. But he'll post photos like this, and he actually posted this one again within the last 3 weeks and was saying, look at all these giants, and people crop the skeleton out because they're trying to hide the truth. And it's like, you can readily find this photo uncropped everywhere. And
here it is.
My guy.
Like, here's a one thing. If it was a big cover-up to crop the photo and make sure that no one knew about it, how do you know about it there, Mr. Marzulli?
Right.
Because I feel like he's not the the craftiest of individuals who can hack the CIA Illuminati Reptoid mainframe or whatever it is.
Well, here's one of the most hilarious things about L.A. Marzulli in recent history that everyone honestly should just never let up on him about. Somebody, when I say he's the most credulous person, somebody posted a alleged fairy that had been, what's the word? For
Photographed?
taxidermy.
Oh, like a taxidermy mount.
Well,
fairy?
it had been, preserved, whatever. And he absolutely believed it. He was like, look, here's a physical specimen. We x-rayed it, we tested it, da-da-da. He thought it was legitimately, like, he didn't think it was a fairy. He thought it was like a small, like, demon bug thing or something.
Is he one of those people who thought that mummified baby monkey was actually like a demon alien skeleton or something?
I don't remember about that specifically, but this, like, bat fairy, whatever it was, when you look at the x-rays he posted, you could clearly see the taxidermy pins that had been used to hold it together. And he had no idea what they were. Like,
this must be part of the demon skeleton. It looks suspiciously like taxidermy pins. My goodness.
When people started pointing this out to him, he got so upset and defensive because he had spent like 20 grand getting this thing tested and analyzed, and he was so mad. And at first he tried to be like, we spent so much money on it, and people were like, okay, that's nice for you, but look at this, it's literally wings from like a bat grafted onto like a small rodent or monkey or something. And he got so mad and he had to take it down. But all of the people, yes, it is Fiji mermaid level bad brain bug. It's that bad. He believed it without question and ran with it until people were like, wow, guy, you really fell hard for this one. And then he got mad.
That reminds me of Roger from Mud Fossil U believing that the Mystery Flesh Pit National Park was a real thing. It's just like, okay, buddy. By the way, Tyler West says, do you think you'll ever get a human the size of Texas or as small as a flea? No, not very likely. By the way, guys, if you haven't seen the Fiji mermaid, that's also a fun one. I have a soft spot for all of these absurd taxidermy things that are always just like some random monkey with other bits stuck on, and then people just credulously believe that this is a mummified mermaid or a fairy or some crap.
Dapper, I can't stop laughing. I'm gonna post the link to that blog to you
awesome.
Because it's literally so funny.
You toss it in chat and I'll pin it.
You wouldn't believe. And yes, I'll put it in the chat. Oh my god, it's so bad.
I want to see what some of these other pictures are that we have here. Are these supposed to be giant skulls?
Please do the demon fairy thing before we go back to this.
Okay. Let me copy that link. Copy link. So you guys are getting some bonus content today. It's not just American Giants, it's all sorts of other stuff.
Olivia Williams in the chat says the joy of cryptid taxidermy.
Why is my copy link address is
what in the what?
Okay, hold on. You know what? It's because I opened up a PDF, and for some reason my computer has the default PDF as like Edge, and I don't really care to change it. Stop it! Oh wait, it's because. Oh goodness, it's because you actually.
Oh.
They're like, oh, you copy this link? Well, that means that you have to be redirected by YouTube. Okay. Oh wow. Yeah, that's. I mean, I'm.
Look at the
you can see the pins. They're all over the place. My goodness.
Like I said, it's too good.
Oh, that's so painfully bad. My goodness.
Yep.
Come on, man.
He put this in one of his quote documentaries.
Look at him. just all over the place. Oh goodness, that's
that. Yeah. So never take L.A. Marzulli seriously about anything.
My goodness.
Yeah.
I have to take a second or so to recover, because my God, is that bad? Look, I mean, you can even on this one, most of them are sort of head on and they're a little hard to see because they're just bright spots. But with this one, you can actually see the head and the actual shaft of the pin holding this together right here. That's amazing. Like, how do you think demons are just full of pins? Is that what L.A. Marzulli thinks? Like, my goodness, that is.
He's all like, oh yeah, I know, jackalopes aren't real, but somebody presented this to him and he couldn't even believe it. He could not even believe it. And guess who it was given to him by? Jaime Maussan, who is like super famous for faking like literally everything when it comes to UFOs.
Oh man, that's. Well, thank you. I needed a nice laugh here. And by the way, guys, in case you're like, what is this actually? Probably a fetal monkey. Probably a fetal monkey.
Well, if you want to know like kind of what it actually is, you're welcome to go check out Michael Heiser's blog on it. And obviously when Michael Heiser went, hey, this is not real, and wow, you guys really got taken in, LA and his buddy got super mad and were like, I can't believe you were slandering us, and they just like didn't even address the claims. So it's bad. And this is again, like it's like Heiser said, like this is precisely why you need peer review before going public with stuff.
Because he'll hopefully help you with this absurd. I mean, look at this. You can see a fracture here, right? And there's these pins holding it together. Like, come on, man. And it's not on the other side. Why are they like? Even if you want to say, oh, I just think those are high density parts of the demon anatomy. Why are they asymmetrical? Why are they all over the place? Come on, man. All right.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, LA tried to double down and be like, yeah, but this has DNA. It's like, okay.
Yeah, of course it has DNA. It's a taxidermy mount.
Yeah. Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah, so
I do like some of these other... I'm
going to call him a grifter, and I'm going to keep calling him a grifter because he used that demon fairy bat monkey or whatever to sell his, documentaries. And then when he had already put out the DVDs or whatever, and obviously it was proven to be a hoax because, of course, it is.
Right.
He was super salty about it.
Aw, poor guy.
Maybe you should try, not having egg on your face by not believing every stupid ass thing you get presented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to take a look at some of these other pictures that are presented as quote-unquote evidence, because these look like these skulls don't look like they're bigger than this woman's head.
No.
Like nothing about this looks like it's giant skulls.
But remember when I was telling you that he just has like fields and boxes and shelves?
Oh yeah,
of bones?
I mean that's them.
Yeah, that's exactly what he did. He just stuck them all on shelves and put them in boxes and drawers. And
this is just more forced perspective. You can actually watch the skulls shrink as you go from the bottom of the picture to the top, and then the ones by his leg look like they're about the same size as his head. It's just like, if anything, this is even more obviously nothing. And then we got to this one again. And I guess this is just... Well, is this supposed to be the same skeleton? I'm not sure what the point of this one is.
That particular picture was used erroneously to prove that these giant skeletons had 6 fingers.
Oh, okay, I see. 1, 2... Yeah, okay.
I will say, and Bent, I hope that you agree, probably a fetal monkey is an excellent death metal band name.
I don't know why we're looking at all that. Oh, we're looking at like a double row of teeth. Got it.
You're looking at teeth that aren't actually completely in double rows.
Right. Because one of the claims
some
about these
extra teeth.
One of the claims about these giants is that they have a double row of teeth, and we did have someone ask me, like, well, maybe they just meant baby teeth. But no, you can actually see from, like, the art that these conspiracy theorists produce that they think that there was one row in front and one row in back as adults. Which,
and I'm like, no, that's hyperdontia, and that's not the same thing.
So do you want to go back to the book and see what the next section is? Okay.
So all that kind of does tie in because, again, shitty archaeology standards and shitty standards basically for everything lead you to be credulous. Don't be that guy. Okay. So the book goes on to kind of describe the dig in Florida a little bit more. It, goes off this is just Dewhurst editorializing at this point, and he, will accuse, actual proper scientific institutions of covering things up, and he has no evidence for that. His evidence is lack of evidence, which, friends, that is not how science works. It's not how archaeology works.
Yeah, if you want to use the fact that we didn't find a thing as evidence, you have to give an extremely compelling reason why it should be there unless you're correct. So, like, if you want to say, oh, hey, I don't think there's any wild elephants in, like, the Alps. Well, okay, you can give really good reasons why the fact that you haven't found any evidence of elephants is evidence that there are no elephants there. Because, elephants are usually pretty obvious. But, like, yeah, otherwise, generally speaking, evidence of absence is not very good evidence for... or absence of evidence is not very good evidence for absence.
Yes, thank you. And it's possible Brainbug may also have some input here on this particular bit where Dewhurst is like, oh, Florida State never released DNA findings on the, haplogroups of these skeletons and bog mummies, but they're probably haplogroup X.
Because he says so.
Because reasons.
Yeah.
So, the next bit he goes off on, yet another, yet more, lost red-haired giant, blah, 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 but...
Oh, yes, the Lost Kingdom of red-haired, blue-eyed Indian.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of in the same vein as the legend that he tried to quote about, like, oh, there were giant red-haired cannibalistic, Native Americans. And when you go back and read the actual account from someone who was in that indigenous tribe, she's like, yeah, they were cannibals. They weren't giants. Yeah, they had whatever color hair or whatever trait, but they weren't giants. They were absolutely cannibals.
Yeah, it's basically a story about a group of cannibals that were then killed off by, like, her grandfather or something.
There's a bit in here about Lewis and Clark. Yeah, we could do that.
Because we got to the red-haired thing. We touched on this last time.
Yes, we didn't get to develop that, so sure. Okay. Do you want me to read this, or do you want to do it?
I'll go ahead. So,
okay.
Now this is from... Where are we right now? Help us out.
This is the New Zealand blog that I had linked Dapper to. These are the folks that are digging around in New Zealand trying to prove that there was a lost race of giants and the whole history's been covered up.
Right.
And blah, blah, blah.
So this source is broadly friendly to the conclusion of the book.
It is broadly friendly. Giants. But as I was also saying to Dapper pre-stream, this blog tends to be a really good example of r/self-aware wolves, where they will debunk literal hoaxes while also claiming that, guys, it's any day now we're going to find the giant skeletons. Any day.
It's around the corner. It's basically the same as fusion power. We're getting there. Trust us. We're making progress.
They've been making progress since 2016. And every so often they'll say, oh, the dig will be done by this date. And I keep reading the blog and there's nothing. They found what they think is a bone. But again, they will not release it to proper testing authorities because, they'll steal it and cover it up and claim that they lost it and da-da-da-da. It's dishonest.
Yeah. All right, well, so below is a section showing a number of Maori heads with black hair How, keep in mind that all 6 heads are shown here have passed through the same process after death, exactly the same process. Those in the second row are a series of red-headed heads. So I think everyone can see. And I think also people generally know that Maoris don't tend to have red hair in life. Asking someone at the Otago Museum that once had a red-headed preserved head, I even recall seeing it myself, I was told over the time changes occur which make all human hair turn red. I was told that it was oxidation that caused it, and the whole issue is generally brushed off. Has anyone else noticed that there are preserved heads where the hair is perfect dark black? It would be hard for the museum to explain that with the same argument. Not really. All you would have to do is say, these are less old.
Right, and if you will look at the progression of these 6 photos, start at top left, like, okay, look at the skin tone. Look at the next one. Look at the skin tone. Look at the third one. Look at the skin tone. Now you get to the bottom row. The hair's a little bit lighter, but look at what's happening to the skin tone. The Celtic NZ head, I guess that's the center one on the bottom row. First of all, the lighting is so crappy that you can't tell.
Everything about this photo is crappy.
Anything is. The only one that looks like it might have a case is the final photo. However, as I said before, look at the skin tone underneath the tattoos. Look at the skin that hasn't been tattooed.
Yeah, it's very reddish.
Look at how reddish orange that is and compare it to the not reddish orange Maori skin on the top row. So this person's going to post a blog claiming like, oh no, there's actually redhead, and then post a photo that literally undermines exactly what they're trying to say.
Yeah, and so this is the kind of thing we're talking about. And it's just like, we also mentioned it with mummy, or not mummies, with mammoths. Like, yeah, the fact that mammoths that we find preserved have red hair, it's probably the same process. They probably didn't actually have red hair in life. They probably had black hair in life.
But they, again, self-werewolves, they said straight up oxidation and then go, yeah, but for reasons, these aren't oxidized.
Yeah, no, that's impossible.
Reasons.
So where am I going to next? Dante, you're the one who's mostly in charge of this. You're the one who's done all the legwork.
No pressure. The next section, it's just some more stuff about like alleged, blue-eyed something, alleged blonde hair something, alleged red-haired something. It's not relevant.
Now, do we have any surviving members of these groups that we could check on to see if this is accurate?
Nope.
We just get a story about blonde hair,
of the
blue-eyed Indians.
Blue-eyed, red-haired. Of course not, because the surviving members of indigenous tribes don't have red hair.
Weird.
They don't have blue eyes. Weird, right? So chapter 11, if you scroll a little further, it's going to touch on kind of what we found regarding Catalina Island. So this is exactly what we were talking about. The absolute racism of early archaeology. Look at the headline on that page. How our white Indians are rising out of legend into fact. Guys, that's not reliable. That's not actual. That's not verified anywhere. This
is an amazing subtitle. Found the mysterious royal burying ground of blonde children fathered by a race of giants 3,000 years ago on Catalina Island. And we already looked at the photographs that were being used to support the idea of giants, and they're just not. And how do we know that they're blonde? I mean, like, what is not?
Did they find hair?
Not that we saw in the pictures.
And here's the fun part: the fact that Richard Dewhurst is so credulous that he will find any account and print it uncritically shows you what a lazy journalist he is, because he quotes, from some Utah paper, like, oh, our white Indians are rising out of legend, and he quotes it, kind of pastes it in. And in that article, it's referring to Glidden as professor. Spoiler alert, he was not and never had any training in hard sciences or archaeology, and professor was not a title he ever legitimately held. Ever.
Now, I have a question, because some of this is connected to Mormon lore. is this Utah newspaper a paper that is associated with the theology or church of the Latter-day Saints?
Weirdly, the newspaper itself is not cited. It just says Ogden, Utah, November 10, 1929.
That's not suspicious.
No, it's fine. Don't worry.
Now look, I'm not saying that a Mormon newspaper can't be a reliable source. However, you have to realize that Mormons have a pretty strong motivation to try to find near Mideast ancestry for Native Americans, because the distinctive scriptures of Mormonism are pretty big on the idea that a group of people fleeing the Babylonian captivity made it to the Americas, and that their their descendants, are the subject of the stories in the Book of Mormon. But it's become increasingly hard to maintain that that could have ever happened, given all of the archaeological and genetic evidence surrounding the peoples of the Americas. So there's a reason that these things kind of get caught up in sort of Mormon pseudo-archaeology in addition to just regular old pseudo-archaeology. So there's a lot of cross-pollination between Mormon pseudo-archaeology and this, American giants. Now, to be fair,
very much so.
My understanding is that most Mormon pseudo-archaeology does not posit giants, per se, because, there's no reason to think that because the thing is, their thinking is basically that a bunch of Jews came to America, and Jewish people aren't known for their great height.
Or their,
blondness,
world-spanning migratory patterns.
Well, they kind of are now.
I mean, they are now, but that's because
it's fairly recent. Yeah, when I say fairly recent, I mean a couple thousand years.
I mean, up until Rome, literally went GTFO, the farthest they got was Spain and maybe Morocco.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they got around the Roman Empire to some extent, but yeah. I mean, to be fair, there were significant populations in actual Rome itself, the city.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
Rome had a Jewish community.
For sure. The Jewish people living in Spain actually were there before what we now consider Spaniards. So have fun with that, freaking Reconquista. So I think we need a Reconquista. I'm just kidding. Unless I will say this next section, I'm just going to read a little bit from the actual article.
I'll zoom down to the picture so people can have a picture to look at.
Okay, yeah, down to the picture. There was conclusive evidence, including strands of hair, that all these people were blondes. At first, these white Indians were thought to be albinos, but careful examination proved that they were not, although they did possess some albino characteristics. And Mr. Lizard in the chat says, similar to the red hair thing, through taphonomy and particular conditions, hair can later appear as blonde after a while, even though they didn't actually have blonde hair in real life.
Yeah, it turns out hair color is not stable through time.
Mm-mm.
It's actually a pretty well-known fact. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just exposure to light can cause hair color to change. I remember it happens actually to my sister, and she's still alive. If she spends a lot of time out in the sun in the summer, she goes very blonde. But in the winter, she needs to heavily dye her hair if she wants to stay blonde, because her natural hair color in the winter changes.
Yep.
And the same is true for her kids. They also have that, where they're blonde in the summer and they're brunette elsewhere other times.
So, this is just more stuff like unfounded claims. Oh, these giants were 7 feet tall. They were blah, blah, blah feet tall. There's no scale for measurement. And also, this was a very important point that I did want to kind of get to in our video, is if you find a skeleton, just because you measure it laying in the ground, head to ankle bone, I guess, just because it's a certain length doesn't mean that the skeleton was actually that tall, because there's these things called ligaments and tendons that hold your bones fairly close together. And guess what? Those are made out of soft tissue, and soft tissues degrade. And if something that's holding things together degrades, those things aren't held together as well.
Yeah. And by the way, Rick Schofield is amplifying one of the things we said. Says some albino characteristics are seen due to the age of the specimen, not because it's albino. Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
You cannot just look at the gross appearance of old remains and then directly from that infer that those match the life appearance of what you're looking at. And this is not just true for humans, it's true for organisms in general. When you find a dead example of an organism, you cannot just directly go from that and say that it had similar life appearance. You have to actually know enough about things like how decay works, what processes can cause changes in texture or color of various organs and skin and hair and all this stuff.
Yeah. And the thing about like bones, you just drop a skeleton in the ground. You don't have a protective casing around it like we do, like when we embalm and then put in a box, our humans
often
bury them.
An airtight box surrounded by concrete, which is...
yeah.
Okay, look, I'm not a big fan of modern American funerary practices. That's ridiculous.
It's a little much. But...
Oh, I want my loved one to look the same forever. Which one, they won't. 2, you're not going to go dig them up, are you? Let nature run its course. That's my take on it.
Hey, listen, that's almost exactly the traditional stance of Judaism is, you know what? Once you've confirmed that this person no longer is alive, you bury them as soon as possible because you want nature to take its course, and trying to just, keep a body around for however long and preserve it. It's just like, that's not natural, guy. Like, if they're an organ donor, go ahead and help someone out that needs an organ, get them in the ground, let it go, start your mourning process, So, hey.
Well, to be fair, all this embalming and airtight, coffins, it's a fairly recent,
fairly recent, right?
Fairly recent thing, yeah. Traditionally, none of that was done by basically any culture. Yeah.
But it's, again, when you just put a body directly into the dirt isn't an airtight box. Soil shifts, things degrade. Animals or worms or other, biological factors contribute to the skeleton spreading out just slightly. So even if you were to measure a skeleton 9 feet end to end, is it because the skeleton was that tall in real life, or is it because all of the connective tissue freaking degraded and soil shifts?
Brainbug says, so that's a no to human taxidermy? So here's the thing. There are actually examples of human taxidermy that are out there, and there are ways in which you can donate your body to science, and it will end up preserved on display in a scientific context. So it's a usually no, but there have been, are, and will be exceptions. So
I just... I'm about to cry laughing. Don Giovanni says the preserved corpse of Lenin is under the chat.
My goodness. Yeah.
This was a good week for old-time Soviet memes.
Should we scroll down a bit, I think?
Yeah, we can scroll. I was actually going to ask if we could take a brief intermission.
Absolutely, we can.
And then come back and tackle the last little teeny tiny section of it, because we're literally almost done.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick intermission. There's going to be an intermission video, which is really boring. It's just a clock, but the clock runs at the correct rate, because despite the fact that every time I checked my math the first time I made this, it never actually ran right the way I was initially doing it. So I just did it the good old-fashioned way with keyframes. Anyway, here it is. Okay, we are back, everybody. Olivia Williams wanted to know how to join the become a channel member. So there is a button below this video if you're on a computer. I'm not actually sure how to do it on a on like a phone or a tablet. But if you're on a computer, you can. Oh, okay, there you go.
There's a button.
Scroll down, hit the join button. It should tell you that there are a number of levels you can join at. Starting, I think, at $1.99. Oh, and there it is. Olivia Williams, welcome to Tetrapod. You now have access to all the various channel early access videos. There is a link up on my community tab for you to join the Discord server for channel members and patrons. Also, everyone who has them, send some wonderful Tetrapod emojis for Olivia Williams. And which reminds me, by the way, guys, I am still trying to get the Patreon up to 400. And so if you want to, please check that out too. The only reason I'm pushing the Patreon as opposed to the channel membership is it's easier for me to track where that is, because those numbers are easier to find than the YouTube ones, which it's just weird. So that's the only reason I'm pushing that one. Anyway, let's get back to this. So, Shanti, where were we?
Woo. Okay, so this is just more BS about Ralph Glidden, who is not a professor and never was a professor. So just throwing that out there. He is not and never has and never will be a professor. Just saying.
Got it.
Okay, so there is a segment of this. If you scroll down until you see the necklace made of conch shells, not conch shells, cowrie shells. I apologize. Yeah, a little bit further. This is just more BS.
Oh, okay, here it is. Yeah, I was gonna say, if those are conchs, those are very small conchs.
Yeah, they're very much not. Those look like cowrie shells. Bobby. Notice the header for this next section. Oh my.
Wow, fun. Okay. The whole significance of the finds now related has not yet been worked out by anthropologists, but the establishment as fact of the old story of a fair race of giants in America is causing a new leaf to be written in textbooks. No, it's not. It may result finally in a revision of our ideas as to where the white race originated, and as to how the primeval races reached what is called the New World.
Hashtag yikes.
So wait, is the idea supposed to be that Europeans came from the Americas as short descendants of American white-skinned giants?
The premise at various times is that they came here first, and then what we now consider indigenous Native Americans came second. And then the giants went extinct for whatever reason. So, but no, they were totally the original OGs that built all the super fancy stuff you guys sourced. Trust me, bro.
Yeah. Okay. That's always fun. It's always fun when it just mask off races.
Oh, yeah. And that was, 1929,
hey, man.
which, nothing weird going on during that period of human history.
Yeah, there was no big surge in, eugenics. Or...
That's fine. So later on, if you keep scrolling, it just goes on to list some more stuff about Glidden. It talks about his negatives. Again, these do not prove giants. If anything, they prove that people don't know how perspective works.
He's supposed to eat.
He's making a very poor attempt to cite some kind of source as if this lends credence to his claims, which, spoiler alert, they don't. You can actually pull these up, and there's various universities and museums that have these negatives to where you can access them. I actually pulled them up, I think, either last session or the session before that. So
Midwest Nerd says, I'm still confused about this Giants timeline. Yet there's a good reason for that. Yeah, they are too. And the thing is that a lot of these ideas were formulated before anything like reliable dendrochronology or carbon dating was a thing. And so basically there was no great way to figure out how old some artifact was in, say, the Americas. Now, you could do it for some areas of the world, like Egyptian, because there's a pretty good Egyptian chronology, or if you could find like written records with dates or something in, say, Europe or China, right? But in the Americas, where there wasn't any writing and there weren't really reliable ways to objectively date things, yeah, you could just say that something was about as old as you wanted, and you could just make up your own chronology. And the thing is, no one could really demonstrate that you're wrong. So yeah, they didn't have to come up with a big, strong, well-supported chronology. And that's one of the reasons why now all their ideas about chronology don't make any sense given what we actually know based on, real science and archaeology.
So before we go on to the next part of this, but yeah, hell, why not? That second blog link, the 125 dig update bad to the bone.
Okay.
Because I had mentioned this before and I don't want to forget about it. But this person or team, I guess, this is one of their blog updates from 2019 when they're digging up the cave or whatever it is in New Zealand. They'll give you dig updates and da-da-da-da. So they're like, oh yeah, well the official story is the Polynesians have only been around, 740 years, but the bones are like super old. And then they show like photos of what they dug up in this cave. So it's like, oh, we think this was a femoral bone, but then, okay, maybe it's not. And then we compared it, to a real bone, and it's definitely a femur, but yeah, it's absolutely from pre-Polynesian like things. But we're not going to get it tested because those corrupt scientists are going to steal it, and they're going to lie about it, and they're going to lose it.
I mean, it does look like a bone. I'll give them that.
Yeah.
These could also be mammal bones from only 200 to 230 years ago and miraculously fossilized at worldwide. It actually, okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the idea of permineralization, right? There's not a particular speed at which it has to occur. Different things can cause permineralization to occur at different times. So there's this idea that like, oh, it takes millions and millions of years for a fossil to form. That's not really true. Fossils can form relatively rapidly, and there you go. It's the reason that people say that fossils are millions and millions of years old isn't because that's how long it takes to form a fossil. It's because that's how long it took, or that's how long ago the rock layer the fossil was in was formed, and we know that through things like stratigraphy and radiometric dating of various volcanic intrusions and comparing strata across geological areas, all that stuff. So I think these guys are falling into that same trope that creationists often fall into, where it's like, well, you can't have a fossil that's, 1,000 years old. Shouldn't it take millions of years? No, not really. No.
Okay, so right below that photo, I want to read the bottom half of this because this kind of tells you who these people are.
Starting here?
Yeah. All right, so the above needed to be said in case we are accused of anything such as finding human remains and not reporting them. If they were reported as such and inspected, we would be told they are not human. Why would they say that? Well, if you can't guess, it's because to acknowledge them as human and fossilized makes them too old for accepted history among certain archaeologists in iwi. Therefore, they would have to say something that there's something else, in which case nothing happens, as all we have done expose some old mammal bones post-European arrival, a world first in the petrification process. If no one admits they're human, then that means we may have discovered a new unknown species of mammal that existed and died before the Polynesians came and didn't exist in any old legend. In any case, the bones would not be handed back, because then they could be retested properly and without manipulated bias, so they would just conveniently disappear, be destroyed, or lost, like all other finds. We all know the bones would be explained away by scientists as not being human, and that is both historically and scientifically impossible if anyone understands fossilization timeframes, but they would still persist with that line of rhetoric to the public as the alternative, i.e. humans before Polynesians and Melanesians, would be too contentious and flies severely in the face of accepted history and the early accepted habitation.
I gotta point out, the fact that current indigenous inhabitants of New Zealand got there about 740 years ago doesn't actually preclude the possibility of earlier inhabitation of the island by other hominins, including even Homo sapiens. It's just we don't have direct evidence of it, but like that doesn't break any ideas in science.
Well, but see, if one thing's wrong, then the whole thing's wrong.
But that's not even a thing that's wrong.
Yeah.
It's just that we don't have good evidence for human inhabitation of New Zealand going back like 2,000 years. But There's still
But
it could have just still happened. That's not impossible. That doesn't break anything.
This is something that I should have mentioned this earlier when I brought up Professor Dave, is that one of his really big talking points is anti-science, anti-authoritarian, just being contrary for the sake of it. This pervades all of these movements.
True.
Pseudo-archaeology, pseudo-historians, like anti-vaxxers, QAnon, all the people that believe in conspiracies, they're anti-authoritarian. And they're just contrary for the hell of it. And like always their evidence is nah.
Yeah.
That's all they have.
And the thing is, I have some sympathy for the idea of, being anti-authoritarian, because
I mean, I get it.
Authority is a dangerous thing.
They are. Yeah, they're not always right, and that's fine. However, science is a field, it is a process, it is a mechanism that we use to study. It is not authoritarian. It cannot be.
Mm-hmm.
It cannot be. So when we say colloquially, science says, what we mean is the current summation of the knowledge we have indicates blah.
Yeah.
There's not a place where you can take me to science. You know what I mean? There's not a single authority of, quote, science with a capital S.
Like we said, there's no pope of science.
There's no pope of science. And when this, particular blog, it's like, oh, well, we're not going to turn in this thing to be tested because they have already concluded, oh, well, they're going to call it fake, or they're going to say it's not human. So, we're not even going to turn it in to get tested because we know what it is. Well, it's probably not a mammal fossil, but we know it's definitely human, but we're not going to prove it because, they're going to say it's wrong and they're stealing.
If we test it, then they'll lie about it. Oh, that's convenient, isn't it?
AKA, they're going to tell us what we don't want to hear. And that's the difference between yokels like this and people who actually do participate in the process of science. Because actual scientists, yes, they want to overturn stuff. I get it, it's an ego thing. However, when you present work, you want people to test it and retest it and verify it because you're not a liar. You want them to prove like, oh, here's my hypothesis. Here's the conclusion I came to. Test me. You want to be right. You put it up for review so you can go, hey, confirm what I already tested. Sometimes that goes according to the way that the author wants it. Sometimes it does not. And it sucks having egg on your face. But that's part of the process. When you submit your findings for other people to double check, that's how science works.
Yeah, you can't not submit because you think no one will agree with you.
Yeah.
If you think no one will agree with you,
dishonest.
It's probably because you're wrong. Not definitely, but probably.
You don't even want to entertain the possibility that you're wrong. And that's not how honest scientific inquiry works.
Well, like we've said on this channel before, the biggest thing about science isn't trying to figure out if you're right. It's trying to get rid of things that are demonstrably wrong. Because for one thing, you can do that more reliably than just try to figure out what the right thing is by just, thinking it up and then going to get some confirmatory evidence. It's you can do that with anything. But you can't disconfirm anything if it's true. If something that actually is true, how would you disconfirm it? You can't. So when you can disconfirm something, that means you can chuck it. And so anytime you have an organization that is scared of disconfirmation, they're not being honest with you.
Yeah.
It's the same with this. It's the same with, say, the Answers Research Journal that says, hey, we won't even publish anything that challenges our position.
Yeah, that's super dishonest. That's not productive. That's not helping anyone anywhere. And like Henry Hansen says in the chat, it's more like anti-intellectual. Yeah, it is very much anti-intellectual, but there is a very specific authoritarian bent to their anti stance. Yeah. The thing is I would say that the difference between, say, archaeology and mathematics is a process of positively confirming things, proving them. Mm-hmm. The archaeology, biology, those areas of science are more processes of elimination for what is not comporting with reality. And, a process of elimination doesn't tend to, quote, prove things. Mathematics proves things. Because if you do it, if you follow that method, it's going to give you the same exact result every single time. That's why it's called a proof. Mm-hmm. The history of our planet can't be, quote, proved in that same manner because we're dealing with wildly variable, components here, from decay in a biological setting. What is the soil made up of? What is the air? What are the particulates in the air? How long has it been? What type of ground did it fall on? Those are extremely dynamic processes. So even if you are able to replicate most of the situation, you still can't get the whole thing. You can only get super close, and you can eliminate things that are highly unlikely to be true. And I myself have struggled with that lack of definitive, this is the way it is. That's a struggle because we're super used to having concrete, footing to stand on. And that's one of those things you have to reconcile when you're dealing with a science like archaeology. There are certain things where we may never actually know the actual way this definitely for sure 100% happened. We can get close. And the more we study, the closer we get to the way it probably was. And if I don't like those conclusions, that's on me. But people who do this day in, day out for years of their life, decades of their life, they're not doing this because they're trying to uphold a conspiracy. They're doing this because it's something they're interested in doing. They love studying it. And just go, yeah, well, they're just gonna call it fake, cover it up, and steal it, and blah, blah, blah. Get over yourself. Get over yourself.
Well, do we have another section of the book that you want to cover?
Now that I'm off my soapbox?
Yes. Hey, I just figured I'd let you go. It sounded good to me.
I mean, the last little tiny section of this book is just some tacked on tangent about Scythians, and there's a definite connection, to Scythian, ancestry, and there he makes a claim about how some of the mounds in Cahokia were oriented to the cardinal compass points, and I'm like, oh wow, that's unique.
Oh, here it is. Yeah, despite the fact that astronomical and geological alignments have been studied at major mound sites like Cahokia, similar studies on lesser known mound sites have never been performed. Okay, this is why this account is so interesting. In it, Haywood notes that a mound was built precisely to the cardinal points. Okay, so here's the thing. Actually not that hard to get pretty darn close to the cardinal points, because the thing is, there are things like celestial poles, and as long as you're pointing one side of a rectangle at a celestial pole, the other three sides are all going to point in cardinal directions. So basically, if you can stay up for long enough in the night to see where the North Star is, you can build something that's directly on the cardinal directions. And the idea that Native Americans couldn't have stayed up for a bit and been like, hey, look, that's the spot where the whole sky seems to rotate around. Why would they have been unable to do this? I don't know. Were they blind? Apparently not. I mean, they're not blind now. Were they just dumb? Is that the implication? Because it seems like that must be the implication, is that they're just dumb. They're too dumb to have looked at the sky for a few hours.
And listen, I wrote a paper on this in my Western Civ class in college about how ancient man wasn't stupid and primitive, and I actually used examples from Sacsayhuaman and Peru and some other places that have megalithic stone walls that have really good masonry. And I was like, look, they're not stupid. They knew how to do math. They knew how to carve stone to where it fit really close together. It's not that hard. And
yeah, it's not beyond their power.
It's not beyond their ken. It's not beyond their capability. There are multiple videos on a channel called Sacred Geometry Decoded that will show you people in the modern day using exactly the same techniques with exactly the same tools to drill circular holes, to, carve stone to where it fits together flush. This is not something that's some giant mystery, and it must have been aliens having band saws and laser cutter. This. No,
Or anti-gravity stone melters.
Or anti-gravity, like, no.
That's one I've actually heard advocated for, is anti-grav stone melters. Because it would just be easier to melt the stones in place.
Yeah, because that doesn't take super effing high temperatures or anything.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
Oh,
maybe
God.
at some point we'll have to do some ancient alien stuff.
Oh man, I've got videos on that for days.
Oh,
literal days.
Because it does seem like we are about to wrap this up. We don't have a whole lot left in this book.
Yeah, literally, I'm just going to mention like one or two little blurbs, and that's going to be it. There is a section in here called "The Mounds Represent the Pleiades."
Oh goodness!
And when I was reading this section, I in real life burst out laughing because the very first bit says, "Modern readers are familiar with the sensation that was caused when Robert Bauval likened the arrangement of the Great Pyramid Complex to Orion's Belt." Speaking of ancient aliens, there is a crank on that show regularly who's named Robert Bauval. And he thinks that the Sphinx is way older than people say it is because, well, if you rewind the stars enough to where it lines up with Leo, that means the Sphinx was built like thousands of years before science says.
Of course.
Of course. That's his big whole thing. And a lot of, ancient aliens folks have ran with that because they really need to challenge the main paradigm of, human history because reasons.
The paradigm where people other than the Europeans can figure out architecture?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Essentially.
We got to get rid of that paradigm. Although, to be fair, they do often say that Stonehenge was aliens. So it's not... That one Europeans couldn't figure out. Cathedrals, yeah, sure. But...
Yeah, sure.
Big circle of rocks?
However,
no.
I will never stop finding it entertaining that the figurehead for the ancient aliens thing right now is a Greek named Georgios Tsoukalos.
Yeah.
I can't not laugh at that. And by the way, for those of you that don't know what he did before he started putting on his alien stuff,
like a physical
he was like a wrestling promoter.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking about...
Yeah, he was into like sports promotion.
I looked into his degree and it was like sports medicine, which is my degree.
And he spent time like involved in like sports promotion. Like, okay, cool.
I mean, it's fine to have that job. It's just not the thing that's going to set me up for expecting amazing amounts of archaeological knowledge.
I would say that just having that degree wouldn't on its face make you qualified to be a figurehead for an entire paradigm that undermines what we know of human history, but it could just be me.
It probably means though that you know a whole lot about joint injuries.
Yeah.
If he wanted to tell me how to treat a sprained ankle or something, I would probably take that man's advice seriously on that.
Yeah. The next several pages go on and on about like
Tesla Ranger says, he's Greek? I thought he was Centauri. You don't get that one. Go watch Babylon 5.
Nice.
Yeah, he does look pretty much like a Centauri.
Yeah, he does.
By the way, I kind of hate that they explained away the fact that humans and Centauris look almost identical by just saying, oh, it turns out it was all just a giant coincidence. Like, come on. Come up with something better.
Just say your makeup department didn't feel like trying as hard. Just say it. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Oh, well.
Like, they even started giving the Minbari hair. Like, what's her face?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because it was getting to be too much of a hassle to actually blend the entire prosthetic.
Yeah. So it was like, you have hair now. It's like, whatever, it's fine. They do have a passing mention of Mohenjo-Daro where ancient alien theorists, proposed that there was a giant nuclear war that happened in ancient India and, it was probably aliens and that's where the Mahabharata came from and blah, blah, blah.
Wait, they think the Mahabharata came from North America?
No, they think that Mohenjo-Daro, which is in Pakistan.
Oh, right, okay.
They think that, there's irradiated skeletons, and that proves that, these tales in the Mahabharata about Vimanas and, like, battles between the gods and all of this, like, definitely epic poetry language is definitely an accurate accounting of human history. And it's just like, fuck it, stop. Just stop.
Sorry, I misunderstood. Oh,
So
the
that's a
sun and moon
drive-by
painted
thing.
on rocks. That can't possibly.
He mentions like Hebrew iconography and was like, oh yeah, but we have some of that in India, and it's like, okay, so
Oh yeah, Mohenjo-daro,
he's
Pakistan.
like, oh well, the Native Americans of Carolina knew that the world was round. I'm like, okay, so did the ancient Greeks. What's your point, Vanessa?
Oh yeah, here we go. Hebrew cherubim with 3 faces. Also, wow, some of the Hebrew cherubim are represented with 3 faces. That's great. Connect this to anything?
No, like the last bits of this are just him throwing in. Oh, by the way, I also believe in this conspiracy and this conspiracy and this claim and this claim and this claim. See, there's the Mohenjo-daro skeletons. The cross and its ancient connection with the cosmic bird of Cygnus. I'm like, oh my god, can you see Cygnus? Like,
here's a fun fact about both constellations and crosses. Well, it's 2 separate facts, right? Constellations. Many cultures tend to group stars into somewhat similar constellations because, well, they're the brightest stars. That's why they get picked, right? And they tend to be in relative close association, which is why they end up getting grouped together. By the way, Senator Cato says, who is this guest? This is Vishanti. And right now, we don't have a whole lot of links to promote her stuff, but I feel like that's going to be changing, right?
I mean, you can subscribe to my channel. It hasn't officially launched with the stuff that I'm going to be putting out. It's, at the moment, it's kind of like some live videos I took at concerts and some photos of kittens. It's not that deep. But I do have most of my channel art done. I've got a spreadsheet full of topics I'm going to cover. I've been writing scripts. I just haven't actually posted them yet. So it's there. It's just like I've got an under construction sign up.
This is so this whole series is sort of like a stealth like backdoor pilot.
Yeah.
Or Vishanti's channel like rebranding.
Yeah, a little bit. And it's also, it really honestly started out as a way for me to help contribute to Dapper's channel because, you know, you can't always contribute financially directly. So I figured, hey, there's a topic that we both like to address and you can put it on your monetized channel and generate income from it.
Which I appreciate, by the way.
Yeah. See, there's many, many ways to contribute to Dapper.
It's true.
Rather than just going, take my money. So
I mean, that helps too.
Money.
That helps too. I'll take as much money as Google will give me. My goodness.
Yes.
Remember that time that Google's motto was "Don't be evil," and then they decided that was no longer going to be their motto.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the same energy as like putting on your blueberries "No cyanide." It's the same energy.
Yeah.
Oh, Inkboy for €2 says, "Did you shill your thumbs up yet?" I don't think I did actually.
Oh.
Guys, go hit thumbs up, and thank you very much, Inkboy, for the €2. Although I kind of want a gyro sandwich, but I don't think €2 is going to be enough to buy myself a gyro sandwich. Although,
well, we were talking about shawarma beforehand, so now
go for shawarma too.
I'm craving shawarma.
You know what? And instead, I'm just going to go like, I don't know, make an egg or something. But let's see.
Eggs.
Let's read some of this conclusion.
You're reading my mind. That's exactly where I was going. It's a very short conclusion because, well, this book has not presented much. Now that you have reviewed the evidence for a former race of giants in North America.
We sure have, buddy.
We sure have.
Bunch of nothing.
I invite you to consider both their legends and their reality. And I'm like, okay. There are legends of giants in many cultures, such as the Titans of Greece or Goliath in the Bible. In fact, the Bible has several references to giants known as the Rephaim, the Anakim, the Zuzim, the Sepharim, and the Nephilim, as in the following quote. I'm going to read it, I don't care. Could it truly be that all these cultural legends are mere legends with no basis in fact? Yeah, it
could be.
It could. It actually could be.
There's no obligation for legends to have kernels. They just sometimes do.
But Alice in Wonderland, everybody knows about that. Are you telling me that's not real history?
The truth about that is that you'll feel very weird if you eat certain mushrooms. That's the kernel of truth.
So you're telling me that story is history?
Yes.
Are these legends just the result of a human need to create something larger than ourselves? Sometimes, yeah. I think not. In these pages and pages of documentation. Documentation should be in quotation marks.
Yeah, well.
We have now We have now seen the American giants' widespread presence, their sophisticated cultures, their royal status, their Caucasian genetic links,
Oh,
and signs
goodness.
of cultural links to other areas of the globe long before Columbus.
Yikes.
We have not seen their Caucasian genetic links.
No, we haven't.
Not-
the most
not
we've said
even once.
is there was some unsubstantiated claim that some of them had Y chromosomes from Europe, but that turns out not to have been the case.
Again, just present the data of the genetic testing on these
No.
remains.
No, I refuse.
Surprise, they're not Caucasian. Have fun with that. The fact that almost no one is aware of these giants today is a telling comment on the role played by the Smithsonian Institution and other institutions of higher learning.
Wow.
So yeah, it is very much like what Henry Hansen is saying. It's anti-intellectualism. They are concealing the truth because ivory tower something. Blah blah blah. Okay, what do the roles these institutions have played in this matter teach us about the role of bias in the studies of supposedly academic or scientific nature? Nothing.
Yeah.
The bias is yours, my friend. The
Mhm.
bias is yours. What would be the reason for not keeping this information in the public eye? It's not
Not
being
compelling. It's the same
not.
reason that the Smithsonian isn't keeping the information in favor of, like, unicorns in the public eye. There's nothing to keep in the public eye.
Yeah, because it's literally not a thing that happened.
Yeah.
And what have we lost by losing our collective memory of these early extraordinary inhabitants of America? What insights into not only American but also global prehistory might their existence offer us? It's legends. They're not true.
Yeah.
It is natural to want to point fingers at a situation like this. The whole book has done that. But the reality is that no one who is presently at the Smithsonian probably has the faintest idea about the history of giants presented here. In fact,
That's nice.
if their academic indoctrination has been rigorous enough, they will probably still remain unmoved by the overwhelming evidence presented in this book. A, that's not what science and science education does. B, learning information about what other people have researched, it's not indoctrination. And C, no, they would not be unmoved by overwhelming evidence.
Yeah.
Oh my god. This should come as no surprise to those who are aware of the 1,200-ton stones in Baalbek, the advanced mathematics and engineering of the Great Pyramids, or the stories of Atlantis as related by Plato. We live in an age where we are hypnotized by our own ignorance, acting as if atomic energy and digital electronics are the height of human achievement. They are.
I mean, so
They
far.
are.
So far.
Yeah. We put stuff on Mars. We literally sent a really super powerful telescope into deep space.
We put something on Titan. That's, to me, more impressive than Mars.
Yeah.
Way
We
farther
put
away.
mirrors on the moon, man. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. In fact, Maddie, who's a regular guest on this channel, has done work with shooting laser beams at those mirrors and waiting for the signal to come back so she can measure how far away the moon is. Like, actual her laser beam went to the moon and back.
Neat.
Yep.
I shot photons at the moon.
By the way, that reminds me, this Wednesday, Maddie and I will be playing D&D together on the Cheshire Vic channel, so check that out if you like D&D and nerds. And nerds
One
playing
might call it
D&D.
hubris. Wiser minds would call it cultural myopia and adolescent grandstanding. The stories of myth and antiquity are real. There were other ages as great as or greater than our own, and whatever we have accomplished was built on the shoulders of giants.
Evidence and Reason says, hi, I just clicked on the creation exotheology. Are you friendly to this idea? Like,
Huh?
the idea that... I'm not exactly sure what the idea is, because I'm not familiar with the term Christian exotheology. It sounds like you're saying something like, what the theological implications of alien life would be. I think, maybe?
What? I am Confucian.
Yeah, I don't know that word, so... Help us out, Sal. Help us out. We're
So,
too
explain.
dumb. We are too dumb for you.
Once I receive the kind of explanation for what that is, I can tell you whether or not I'm friendly to it. However, also take into account that I am not trained in biology, so I am wildly unqualified to make a informed assessment.
And
And Senator Cato the Younger says, thanks for the good Kent Hovind imitation. That was not my proper Kent Hovind imitation. If you want to suffer through that, you have to watch the Kent Hovind's dissertation series.
yeah, well, how many episodes was that? 6?
Like 6.
Yeah, we went through every single word of that dissertation. It was Look, I had fun doing it, but I'm also glad it's over. It's one of those things.
Let me, I forgot, I meant to post the link to what will eventually become my channel in the chat. So
I'm gonna pin that. That'll be pinned for
thanks
for a while now. Once I figure out how.
Like I said, at the moment, it's just old stuff, and that will eventually become proper stuff.
There you go. It was pinned to the top of the side chat. Oh, that was a blog that we had people looking at. Sal. So, yeah, that was a blog that had stuff like a guy named L.A. Marzulli falling for an obviously hoaxed taxidermy model, because he had this X-ray done of it, and it was full of pins, and he still didn't notice that there was something. That's why that was there. Sorry, I forgot that was even the name of the blog, was Exotheology.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, that's not my blog. It is a blog that I enjoyed reading because they dunk on credulous pseudo-historians.
Yeah, I can't speak for that blog. Although I can speak to the fact that X-ray does not show an actual organism. It shows a taxidermy.
I can't stop laughing at it.
It's really bad. All right, so yes, no one has ever argued that people are. The thing is, every time you show something like this, right, where we have the skeleton of an exceptionally tall person, yes, exceptionally tall people exist, but they don't form populations of 8-foot tall people
who are worshipped as god kings.
Right. Like, if you want to suggest that there's a quote unquote race of giants, pointing to the fact that there are outliers among non-giant people groups doesn't help.
Yeah, and I guess one of my closing little tidbits here will be, people are like, oh, there was giants in the Bible. Well, there was a description of the land given by surveyors who were so unwilling to go to war with the inhabitants that they crawled back to, Joshua and were like, oh my God, we can't fight these guys. They're literally like giants. We're going to get whipped. There weren't actually giants. They were just using hyperbole because they didn't want to fight them, which I can relate to personally. I too probably would have exaggerated the conditions of the place where we were going because I don't want to fight. But that's not an accurate assessment of that particular passage. And when people discuss oh, but there were giants on the earth in those days. Okay, that's fine. That's also in a very, very mythologically framed, poetically structured segment of early Genesis. So you have to be very careful about how you're reading those and not just assume that it's describing a literal history.
Well, even if it is, what the literal history would then be was these guys said there were giants. Yeah,
and again, I am more than willing to grant a position if someone has corroborating evidence. I'm not so, oh my God, I'm stuck in my ways that I wouldn't acknowledge a preponderance of evidence. I am actually open to the idea. I'm completely fine with it. However, to date, the things that have been put forward as supposed evidence for giants or a race of giants worshipped as god kings has been extraordinarily unconvincing.
Yeah.
And extremely suspect.
Well, Senator Cato says, great live stream, guys. I'll check out the earlier appearances with Vishanti. Well, please do.
Thank you.
I think all of the Kent Hovind dissertation videos have you there. Maybe you missed one? I don't think so.
No, I think I was there for all of them, but I think Chesh was not in all of them.
Yeah, Chesh and Bent were in and out.
Bent sat in on a few.
Yeah.
So. There was times we just couldn't, we had to share the insanity, and there were other people coming in.
And then you've been in every one of these. So there's 4 parts of this, and there were 6 parts of that. And, Vishanti will probably be back on at some point. We should do some Ancient Alien stuff, right? So,
man, I'll link you to that 3-hour debunk from the first 5 seasons, I think, of Ancient Aliens.
I've seen that 3-hour debunk.
It's a great video.
It's really good, although it is exceptionally long.
It is, but it was also covering the first 5 total seasons or something of Ancient Aliens, and now we're up to 10, 16. I can't even remember how many seasons of that show were on.
I think it's also one of those things where the seasons don't just happen every year; they happen at a weird pace. So
yeah,
I think there's been more seasons than there have been years that it's been on. So.
Yeah, I think because they did release 2 seasons in 1 calendar year.
Yeah, something like that.
They've done that several times. So Yeah.
But hey, what else do we have in this book? We hit the conclusion. Are we?
That's it.
Is it time to throw this book in the trash where it belongs?
Yes, it is. Like, it is time to delete this with extreme prejudice, because he has an index, which, okay, his bibliography is barely a page.
Oh, let's take a look at it.
That shouldn't surprise anyone. Like, if you'll notice, there's an extreme lack of peer-reviewed journals.
Wow, that
and
footnote.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that isn't it? When you said extremely small bibliography, I was not expecting it to be that small, I'll be honest.
Like I said.
This is a smaller bibliography than most of the papers I did as an undergrad. Like, this is ridiculous. Wow.
For someone that purported to be an investigative journalist, this is extremely poor documentation.
You know, I would expect at least 3 or 4 pages for a text this long of bibliography, but I guess not.
Nope.
About the author, we don't care about you.
Yeah, like I said, this is extremely poor scholarship, and it's very poor investigative journalism.
My goodness.
Because he was searching for giants, couldn't find anything, and then decided to look for sensationalist headlines, and that's where he got the bulk of his material.
We're gonna zoom out a little bit so that people can appreciate the whole. Because I had zoomed in extremely high so that it was more, legible for people, especially people on small devices. But like, look at what we got here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 16 cited works. We're gonna do, in a
300-page book.
Yeah, that's kind of embarrassingly low, but what are you gonna do? All right, well, I think that wraps up this wonderful mess of a book, which again, The Ancient Giants Who Ruled America, The Missing Skeletons and the Great Smithsonian Cover-Up. And I liked that on the cover, while there is the Smithsonian, there's also a guy looking up at a skeleton that is not an example of the giants who ruled America. It's some guy like whose name we know because he was a modern human.
David B 22585 says, does it rise to the level of poor scholarship?
Yeah, that's a good question. That
is a good question.
I will leave it to the linguists and the scholars to determine that. But it is a
spoiler alert. There are no missing giant skeletons because, well, giant skeletons would have to exist for them to be missing. And he provided no evidence for a great Smithsonian cover-up.
No. All right, guys. Well, Vishanti, your channel, do you have an ETA on the channel, or do you not want to tie yourself down just yet?
I don't want to tie myself down because I'm going to be gearing up for Passover, and I need to make sure that I just do some tidying and make sure I go grocery shopping. So I don't want to put a firm date on it. I want to set a tentative date for end of April, early May.
Okay.
Just don't hold me to that because I am extremely proficient at procrastinating.
I can't even imagine how I would hold you to that. Sort of like showing up and forcing you to upload. I don't even know what I could do. I mean,
there is a world where people can pester me into getting things done, but I don't feel like people should have to spend the energy doing that.
You don't want me to pester you. Got it.
I mean, you can if you want to, but I need to be better about managing my time.
Fair enough. All right, guys. Well, let's see what's coming up here on this channel. So Tuesday the 12th, we've got Eric with Erica. Wednesday the 13th, myself and Erica and Maddie, as well as Bent Hovind, Erica's fiance Luke, Cheshire Vic, and TD Lane, all of whom have been on this channel except for Luke. We'll be doing some Dungeons and Dragons. We've got our campaign that goes on Cheshire Vic's channel. Also, when people watch that, we ask that instead of super chatting, if you want to help instead donate to the charity that we link. We usually link a educational charity that, while it is based in the United States, does do work outside the United States. And they do a lot of science education stuff. Then on Thursday, the last episode of the series about Pastor Carl Kirby is up. Then I don't have anything in particular scheduled for the 16th, but the 19th we'll start a new... Actually, I think it'll just be a supercut of my Andrew Snelling series on the 19th. Or sorry, on the... that's the 21st. I don't know what day I'm talking about. The 19th should be a Matt with Maddie, where we talk about Matt Powell with Maddie from Science Side Up. Then, yeah, the 21st will probably be the supercut of the Andrew Snelling series. But also, that Wednesday, the 20th, on my off-topic channel, Top Hats Off, there will be a live-streamed RPG. So, we went Power Rangers RPG. So, I've been working on it for months. So, feel free to come by and, say hi. It's not monetized.
Should be working on something called Mothership.
Yeah, I would have if everyone had actually gotten me the actual audio that I needed.
Some of us did.
Yeah, I know. You're not the one who I'm talking about.
Throwing shade.
She knows who she is.
Yeah. Leroy Jenkins.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. We're going to get out of here, and I hope you guys have a wonderful and safe weekend. If you're celebrating any holidays anytime soon, I hope that you enjoy your holidays.
Yeah, for those of you, if there's anyone out here that's, observing Ramadan, I hope you have an easy fast. If those of you celebrate Passover doing that, hope you have a good Passover. If anyone celebrates Easter or springtime fertility harvests and festival, enjoy it. I hope that it is productive and enriching for you.
Yes, it's a very holiday-ish season right now, although the Ramadan thing is just a coincidence.
True.
All right. We're going to get out of here. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
I just want to take a moment to thank all my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Tovand, Denny5252, Ian Chen, John Ackerman, Chris Love, Landon Knoll, Sphincter of Doom, Star Runner, and Patrick Dennis. It's because of my channel members and patrons that this channel can keep on going at the blistering pace of 2 to 3 and almost always 3 uploads per week. And because I do run this channel at a slight loss, it is very important that anyone who can afford to and really likes my content, please do consider joining the Patreon or joining the channel with the link below. Patreon link is in the description. On Patreon, you can join at a 10% discount if you join for an annual subscription. And if for some reason you can't afford it, or an annual or monthly pledge isn't for you, there are always other ways to help out the channel. There's an Amazon wishlist linked in the description. There's also a merch store full of almost everything that Teespring makes. Heck, you can get my face on a onesie. And of course, if monetary support isn't something you can do, please just like and share this video and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget, if you're subscribed, turn on that notification bell.